What's up, everybody? Welcome to Week 14's episode of Your Fielder's Choice, live before NFL kickoff. The boys are back in town. We haven't had a full group like this in a couple of weeks. Welcoming back Adam, Miz. What's going on, guys?
What's up, man? How are you guys?
Pretty good, pretty good. Week 14, in some season-long aspects, this is a pretty important week if you're trying to make that playoff push. Obviously, we're not going to get into that many details, but the season's humming along here, December is really when the good teams start to separate themselves from the pack. We're seeing some interesting trends in the NFL. So it should be a fun week for us here.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I think that we're getting to the end of it. Like we were talking about, it's always a sad time when you're past the halfway point in NFL and, you get towards playoffs. It's good for some people and their fan bases are happy and others are disappointed. So we're excited, man, ready to get to it today. Got an interesting slate, I think is putting it mildly.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if you look at the slate, just from a Vegas perspective, not really a lot of high scoring over-unders or totals for these games. Coming in at number one here is the Bills and the Bucks at 52.5. They're the only game on the slate that's over 50, followed by the Raiders and the Chiefs at 48. So it should be an interesting one. So I feel like there's going to be some lineup builds out there that probably make us feel a little uncomfortable, but that's okay. And then also on the implied total, just when you're looking at the per team basis, the Chiefs are coming in at 28.5, followed by the Bucks at also 28.5. So again, not too many high scoring predictions on the Vegas front, but we'll jump into it, see what we got, and we'll get everybody out of here plenty of time before kickoff so they can mull this over a little bit more. Let's jump into cash real quick. All right.
Yeah.
So this week is, like I said, interesting. In my opinion, you're either going to pay up for one of the big dogs or you're going to kind of take a cash break and go down to like the Taysom Hills, Cam Newtons of the world. We just had a lengthy conversation about what we're looking at here. What do you think at quarterback, Adam?
Oh, man, it's tough. So I think that quarterback is probably not the first, second, or maybe even third player in your lineup. You're going to kind of make that decision somewhere down the line. I think I've expressed that on lineup build videos before, is that, you don't have to build straight down. I think that kind of hampers people a lot of times. They get they get tunnel vision, right? They start building and they're like, I have a quarterback, so I have to play this quarterback because that's my decision. I plant my flag on this guy and then they move on, right? They have to pair a receiver maybe or whatever it is. So I think that with quarterback this week, I mean, since we're starting there for, purposes of walking down the lineup list, looking at an ownership play, I think that you have obviously Taysom Hill, Cam Newton are going to be on there because obviously we have, ownership kind of trending towards paying down. That's fine. I think that Taysom is probably going to be the chalk guy here. We kind of talked about this, that he's pretty awful in regards to, I won't say awful. He's better than us. Like he could play quarterback in the NFL, right? He was pretty bad this last week, under 50% completion. I talked about this, I believe, earlier in the week. And just looking at it from a standpoint of if you're playing Taysom Hill, you're kind of banking on the fact that they're playing against the Jets and the Jets are awful. That he's going to use his legs to run. But here's kind of where I'm looking at. And this is just my thing. If you're playing Taysom Hill because you love the price and you love that he's going to give you a decent floor, awesome, then play him. I'm fine with that. Me personally, I'm just looking at it from more of a game theories perspective of that you're playing the Jets here. Is New Orleans, I mean, their defense is pretty good. They've given up some points recently, but they're good. The Jets are really bad. The Jets are with pretty much all of their skill players, starters, and a lot of their secondary guys are all out. So New Orleans looks to be comfortably in a position to where they can kind of slow the game down. They can play at their own pace. So I don't see any reason to risk Taysom Hill. If I'm, the New Orleans coaching staff just saying, okay, we're going to have this guy run the ball a ton of times. Obviously 11 for 101. I mean, those are big gashes that he had on the defense against Dallas, but Dallas is notoriously bad at contain. They're very, blitz heavy outside pressure kind of thing. So Taysom was able to pick his spots and obviously run the ball well. 46% completion, man, 4 interceptions, all those things are tough. So I guess what it really comes down to is you have to decide, do I like Taysom enough, or do I really want to look at Alvin Kamara, which we're going to talk about later. Cam is fine. I played him in some of my lineups whenever he got yanked against Miami. So, I mean, he's hard to trust here, but at the same time, he's 5,400. So he's absolutely in play. I mean, Carolina's pretty bad. I think that they schemed really well against him. Brian Flores did an excellent job. Great game plan here, but they're back at home, week 13 bye. So Carolina is looking like they should be in a good spot to have.
They also, I think they also fired their offensive coordinator over the bye week too. Carolina, it'll be interesting.
Yeah,
they change it up.
Absolutely. And I think that's a great point because now Cam can kind of play Cam football, right? He doesn't have McCaffrey out there. He doesn't feel like he has to feed anybody, so he can kind of do his own thing. And that's where he plays really well, man, when he can just kind of go off the cuff. So I really like him here. In that same range, I know he's not going to get a ton of love probably for cash, but I do want to mention that Taylor Heineke for Washington, he's a really cool player to watch. He's in a great script here against Dallas, who's notoriously bad against quarterbacks. They're going to be in plenty of opportunities for him to throw. And he's got some legs, man. He's got some speed on him. So if you're walking up that ladder for cash, obviously you can pay attention. You can look at some Joe Burrow there. I think Ryan Tannehill is going to get plenty of opportunity to sling the ball against a bad Jacksonville team. Derek Carr obviously is in play in that high Vegas total with the Raiders and the Chiefs. But you're kind of walking up to your next pivot point is Dak Prescott. I mean, 6,700. I think that he's going to get a lot of love and some optimals. People are going to want to play pieces from this game. Dak is obviously in a position where he's kind of been a little up and down, but Washington is really good at stopping the run. So Dak's going to have to do some work through the air. Should have his big three receivers back, got Dalton Schultz back there. If Tony Pollard is banged up or whatever, maybe they're just going to get the ball more to Zeke or just rely on the passing game. All those things are definitely in play. And then you kind of walk up at the end. Obviously, Lamar Jackson's always there. I'm not really huge on that game, but he's solid for cash. But he's 7,400, and you're right there at that Tom Brady, Josh Allen, and even Patrick Mahomes level where, we talked a little bit about Josh Allen beforehand. I think Tom Brady's going to go overlooked. Probably not a cash play because he's a ownership percentage guy, but Tom's always good in big games. But I don't know. I'm going to toss it back to you. Is there one that you're just loving? Because I think that quarterback is going to be my third or fourth guy, probably maybe even further down as far as picking somebody.
Yeah, I mean, before this conversation, I guess maybe I was kind of pushing towards the Taysom Hill route only because of the salary save that you get there. And the Jets are pretty bad. So I do think there's room for both him and Alvin Kamara to both be successful. You could theoretically run them both if you want, Right. Just look at what your boy Gardner Minshew did last week against the Jets.
That's
right? Looked like a superstar out there for at least a portion of the game. So, it's very feasible to think that Taysom Hill could have a good game as well as Alvin Kamara. Because no Ingram is huge in that matchup because I don't really think they're going to run Tony Jones, who's the next guy up, much, maybe to give him a break coming off the injury. But yeah, no, I agree with you on the Kamara front a little bit. But for me, I was looking at Taysom Hill, and if I wasn't going Taysom Hill, I was probably going to target either Tom Brady or Josh Allen. That was just how I was going to do it. But this week is a little interesting. I'm not really trying to pay up at quarterback, so I am trying to find that value. Cam Newton is also a viable person as well in this situation. However, he's burned me and probably millions of other people the last couple of weeks when I did put faith in him a couple of weeks ago against that Miami team. So, it scares me off a little bit. But, to quote ourselves, you got to be a goldfish sometimes. So we'll see what happens there. But, yeah, I guess for me, it's either Taysom or, twist my arm, Tom Brady, something like that. That's what I'm looking at. But those are two wildly different builds, if I go Taysom route, I have flexibility elsewhere. If I go the Brady route, where else am I saving? I got to pull these values down from somewhere else. So,
yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of where I was at, why I mentioned Heineke at 5,500. I know he's not going to get the ownership, but I mean, he's in a great game script too. You don't have to necessarily pair him with a receiver, but what is Dallas going to do? They're going to try to score points. Washington has to compete with that. And we've seen them put up some big numbers before. I know he's not the most viable in regards to he's not going to use his legs. But if you kind of look at his way, I mean, he doesn't have any big games out there, but he's pretty consistent. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. That's somebody to look at, obviously. I don't know. I'm going to decide that a little bit closer to lock. But yeah, I'm all aboard, like I said, paying up. I will say just something that I mentioned before, and then this could be just totally off the wall, doesn't matter, but Josh Allen's in a great game script. However, I think that the Tampa Bay defense is very good at the linebacker position. All those linebackers have speed. They're all very good, all pro kind of caliber guys. So, like, is Allen really going to be in a position to be able to use his legs, or is he going to have to really sling it here? But they're playing in Tampa. So, I mean, it should be a decent, weather game script kind of thing. I don't think there was any real weather to could be concerned about.
No, nothing too much. I'm in Florida right now. I'm not in Tampa, but we're really hitting our stride here weather-wise. So no weather concerns that I'm aware of. All right, I think we covered QB pretty in depth there. Let's bounce over to running back. This is another one. 1,000 ways you can go, in my opinion. So you got your pay up options in Eckler and I guess Fournette, and then you got some possible interesting backs that if you're following injury news could impact what you do, such as a Javonte Williams. What do you think here?
Yeah, I mean, that's really going to be huge, the Javonte Williams news, because there's that range of players in that range that I just love. I mean, you have the Javonte Williams, you have Josh Jacobs at 6,200, you have Antonio Gibson at 6K, who's probably going to wind up being the chalk darling of the day, just because Washington kind of funnels in their targets. Heineke loves to throw to the running back out of the backfield. Dallas is susceptible to that. So I think that range is going to be very big. I think that if Javonte gets the work, if we get Melvin Gordon used before lock, he's probably going to be my favorite running back play. I will kind of look at the upper tier ranges, whatever you want to say, is that obviously Austin Eckler makes a ton of sense against the Giants team where, they're favored to kind of like, hey, look, we don't really have our Keenan Allen guy out there. So Eckler can definitely soak up a lot of these targets. I was a little worried that, thinking, okay, well, can you play Eckler here at 8,300? That's a big salary tag here. I kind of leaning more towards pivoting towards the Kamara at 7,900. I think that they're both kind of in similar situations. Kamara is without, Mark Ingram. Kamara is they're in a situation where they should be up against the Jets and they should be able to run the ball and not risk getting Taysom Hill. They're trying to push for a playoff berth. Or, like I said, you can look at Lenny Fournette. I think that he gets overlooked sometimes and he's in a great game script. Buffalo's pretty stout on the defensive front, but I mean, let's look at him here. He's put up 22, 47, 13, 17 DraftKings points, hasn't touched 20 carries, hasn't touched 18 carries in any of those games, but
I was going to say he's more on the receiving. Yeah, on the receiving.
Man, he's just those targets. Like, that's the great part about PPR and about DraftKings scoring. Obviously, FanDuel's a little bit different. You're more touchdown reliant on carries and yards, but I think that Lenny Fournette's absolutely in play. We talked a little bit about Elliott. If he was to be in the situation where he had no Tony Pollard, he could be looked at. But I think Washington has a good stout D. But yeah, man, I think that you're going down in that 6K range, and you're kind of like, it's just. There's a lot of good players there, man. I wouldn't touch the value of DeAndre Swift's out, so let's play whoever his guys are going to be. I've seen a couple of different guys in there, and I'm not even really going to mention them because I don't think that they're in play for cash. I wouldn't go there. But we have to kind of visit the underpriced running backs. Barkley's at 6K. Obviously, he's somebody to look at. You can look at we talked about the other guys in that range. The Tennessee running backs, whether it be Hilliard or Foreman, are absolutely in play here. Jacksonville is not great there. If you can pick the right Seattle guy, that's probably more GPP, and maybe Miz will talk about that. But against Houston, whether that's Rashad Penny or Collins, whoever that is, they're going to crush. But, I mean, I think that you're going to look at this Jeff Wilson play. I mean, he's starting to pop up everywhere. I don't feel great about it. Jeff Wilson chalk. I mean, I remember last time he was chalky. Everybody was like, well, he's just going to be the right play no matter what. He's not. They got Deebo Samuel there. They got Ayuk there. They got all man. So,
stay away from those Niners running backs unless it's Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just so tough. I mean, to be like, okay, he's going to be the right play because he's going to get the work. Well, sometimes you'll see these guys, and you mentioned him earlier, the backup for the Saints, Tony Jones. I mean, he had this last week? He had 16 carries, but 27 yards at 2.7 DraftKings points, no targets, no receptions. So, like, it's very easily it could easily happen where San Francisco could be in a situation where Cincinnati, we've seen it, man. They've had good teams. They just completely blew the doors off them in the first two quarters. And guess what? They're in a pass script. So San Francisco could be a great GPP stack in their passing game. But what do you think on running back, man? I really want to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'm kind of in line with the way you're thinking. it looks like here, if I'm looking at projections and percentages, Antonio Gibson is going to probably come in as the chalky play, and I would imagine Javonte Williams would be that guy. He would be number one if we get Melvin Gordon news anytime soon. I just don't know if we're going to get it in time. So we'll see what happens there. Denver is a 10-point favorite going up against a bad team at home, so that's a great game script for that running back, whoever it is. But I'm curious to know, like, if Melvin Gordon does play, do you still have a little love for Javonte Williams? Because it's not like Melvin Gordon's great. He's having a decent year for Melvin Gordon standards, but I'm just wondering if that impacts. Like, are you completely off Javonte Williams if Gordon is playing?
Oh, no, absolutely not.
In cash,
in cash, I think you could still play him. I mean, but here's the thing: is like, if you're looking at this. This decision has to be made before lock. All of these running backs that are in that value range and these pay up guys, you're talking about everyone pretty much outside of an Eckler play. If you have a good pivot lineup to where you can say, hey, I'm going to plug in Eckler for now, maybe, or maybe you're playing two Chargers, one in the flex at wide receiver, and then you have the option to move over, then great. But I think you can put him in there. I think he's going to get work no matter what. Like, we can't just say, okay, it can't be the chicken or the egg thing, right? It has to be like, you have to say he's a good player because he's a good player and he's in a great spot. And I mean, we'll talk more about it when it comes to, to defense, but Detroit sucks. So what is Denver going to do? They score some points and they're just going to run the clock out. That's all they need to do here. So we'll talk more about it on defense, but I think that when you're making decisions, that it's a 6K range. Like, it's 5,900 at 6K. Like, what are we going to do? Do you love Gibson enough to say, hey, he's going to play? I like Jacobs a lot, but I mean, that $300 in salary may be the difference of if it's going to get me somebody else that I like or somewhere else that I want to be between Jacobs and
I was going to mention Jacobs. He's a 3-down back again now with the Drake news that he's out. So,
dude. And no Waller. He had 9 receptions. He was tied for the team lead this last week, 9 out of 9 catches. I mean, just 9 for 38 yards. That might seem like, oh, okay, that's 12.8 points. Like, in DraftKings standing. I mean, he got 13 of 52 against Washington, who's stout against the run. We mentioned that earlier, but got the touchdown there. Still turned in 24 DraftKings points. Like, okay, why does it make him a bad play? Because he's not going to be high owned? No, I just think in cash you have to think a little bit for yourself and not say, oh man, well, I have to play this Jeff Wilson play because everybody's going to play him. And if he crushes that, blah, blah, blah. It's not about that. Take the name away from it a little bit. Look at the price tag and what you need as a return on your fantasy points that you're invested in.
Exactly. Yeah, no, we pretty much agree there on that front, especially with running backs. Let's bounce over to wide receivers. Playing into the theme of this week, I don't know if there's any clear cut, guys that you're jamming in there, but there's definitely certain options that look appealing.
Yeah. Man, wide receiver is tough. I think that you have to play at least one Cowboys receiver. That's probably going to be a necessity based off a matchup. I'm really big, and I think we talked about this whenever I was earlier in the week looking at an early look at lock. But I think that Mike Williams is probably going to be the de facto guy. 6K doesn't really get. He hasn't been moved up in price because of no Keenan Allen with the being out of the lineup and being unavailable. But you can look at a Guyton play there. Josh Palmer, I think that's his first name, but Palmer. All the Chargers guys are going to be something that we could look at. But from a matchup rating, it's kind of funny because we mentioned it. I don't think Deebo Samuel is out of play. He has the best matchup in regards to, against the Cincinnati secondary. So that's definitely someone to look at. But in cash, it's kind of hard because he's not going to be owned. So if we're looking at it just from the ownership standpoint, I'm going to pull that up real quick. I think that we have Mike Williams is leading the slate. DJ Moore, I see, is really high. I think that's going to change a little bit here, especially because, I mean, sure, he's a great play, but do you need him here, or are you going to pay that $6,200 on DraftKings or that $6,800 on FanDuel? That could probably be one of those running backs who I think has a much better floor, probably, and maybe an equally high ceiling. So that's something to kind of look at from a game standpoint. But Chris Godwin is always getting the love. I mean, he's not priced up, man. 7,100, that's pretty solid still.
He's been balling out, Chris Godwin. This season.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, he's been super reliable.
Great play. Jalen Guyton, obviously, we talked about. He's kind of popping. He's probably going to be the value guy on DraftKings, 3,400. People are going to be like, well, I don't want to play him because I'm playing Mike Williams. You could probably play both of them here, to be honest with you. I think the Giants secondary, Giants are sneaky. They're going to get some sacks, and they're going to be a decent punt defense here. But I think the Chargers have enough weapons still where I was kind of leaning against them. I thought Mike Williams might sit out, to be honest with you. And then I was going to really dislike them. And so I was like, but you know what? He's there. So I think you have to consider these guys here. But both Seahawks guys, Lockett and Metcalf, they're probably not going to get any ownership, sub 10%, but they're absolutely going to be in play here. Stephon Diggs is going to be a good pay up option. You're going to have some salary left. So people are going to look at Tyreek Hill. They're going to look at Stephon Diggs. Tyreek Hill is always a great option. If I'm looking at 15 to 18% ownership, if he was like that low in cash, he's somebody that has huge leverage at that price tag there. If you're not playing an Eckler or Kamara and you're paying down for running backs times 3 and one in the flex, and then you're looking at like a Julio Jones is back for Tennessee, 5,400 is a great spot there at a great price. So, I mean, most times in cash, you're going to target high scoring games, high pace games. I think the highest pace game is Dallas, Washington. Then I think you have the Raiders and KC, and then Tampa Bay and Buffalo are going to be the 3 highest paced games. So you can absolutely look in any of those directions. What do you think in regards to wide receiver as some plays that you like, and maybe your thoughts on the Dallas receivers?
Well, speaking of the Dallas receivers, one of the guys that, you mentioned CeeDee Lamb, but I do like Amari Cooper coming back this week. He's sub 6K. He's 5,900. Right. I'm not really sure if I'm landing on like playing him in more GPP versus cash. I know this is the cash section, so it's interesting. That one's going to be more like, do I need the salary? Like, it depends on what my build looks like. Which to be transparent with everybody, like I haven't finished them yet. I've been tinkering, but like nowhere am I near my locked lineup yet. So it may change, but he's definitely a nice salary saver. I do like Deebo Samuel. Is it fair to even call Deebo Samuel sneaky in this week? I mean, he's been lighting the league on fire this whole year, but because of that recency bias where he didn't play, he had the injury. How much will they use him in San Francisco? I think if he plays, they use him. That offense is so different when he's on the field, which will impact possibly George Kittle, who we'll talk about later on. That's an interesting play there, because if you're going in on Deebo at 8K, you need him to kind of pop off, in my opinion, if you're paying up that much for him. So interesting. I also like Mike Evans this week. Mike Evans is one of those guys that has obviously the talent to kind of blow up here. Without Antonio Brown, he's been actually performing really well. He's got 17 plus points in 2 of his last 3 games. He's got 26 targets over the course of those last 3 games. Again, I'm not sure if I'm going to land on him on cash, but we can talk about it more with Miz, maybe a good leverage point there over Godwin. But Godwin makes sense. Also, I've seen in just random articles and videos and things like that, if you're looking at the Jets, which not many people are, but James Crowder. He's been getting a little bit of love, especially with the Elijah Moore news. All names that are on my list for sure. And then, simply just because he's at that 6K range and he's actually been performing decently with a whole slew of different news over there in Las Vegas. But Hunter Renfrow is totally viable against, the Chiefs this week. The offense has got to go through somebody. We like Josh Jacobs, as we mentioned. But they got to throw the ball. So Hunter Renfrow is that guy. He just seems to, zip across the field, 10 yards here, 15 yards there. And, by the end of the game, he's got 15, 20 points just on these, these small yardage or medium yardage passage. So, that's kind of like where I'm looking this week.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely behind all that. I think that some of your other plays are going to dictate what you're going to do at wide receiver, and you got to decide if you really are dead set on playing Mike Williams or not. Like I said, I mean, he's in obviously a great spot. He should get funneled a lot of these targets, and I do like the fact that the Chargers are playing at home. So I think that it's kind of you got to risk it a little bit if you want to fade him in cash games. I mean, if you don't play him, you absolutely need to play Guyton or Eckler, probably Eckler for sure. So, but I wouldn't go overwhelm yourself with Chargers value because Keenan's out. That's what happens a lot of times to DFS players is they see people and they see opportunity and they totally forget about the game script. Like, I mean, those are big things. Like we need to look at, does this benefit them in multiple ways? Like the Josh Jacobs thing, is he beneficial in the fact that he's going to get extra extra targets. Absolutely. Antonio Gibson's in a great game script. No Logan Thomas at tight end. So those are all things. We talked about the Kamara thing. So, I mean, for the receivers, I think you have more flexibility and you can kind of move them around. And ultimately, I think it comes down to just the salary you have left over. So, yeah, I'm good on a wide receiver.
Yeah, let's jump into our favorite spot here, tight end.
Oh, yeah.
Is this, I'll just ask a flat quick, is this Austin Hooper week or are we going somewhere else?
God, it's freaking Austin Hooper week. I'm going to defer a little bit to what I was talking to our guy Miz about it. He'll kind of come on and talk more about it. But just looking at it from the standpoint of that Baltimore is, in his words, by design, bad at covering the tight end. No David Njoku this week, a divisional matchup here. Hooper at 3.4K. I mean, he should just get every bit of opportunity. Whether or not he comes through on it, I don't know. But I've seen some games where Baltimore's just kind of just giving up stuff up the seam. And I mean, Hooper could be that guy. You could definitely look at a value play in that same range. Jared Cook's going to pop a little bit in optimals because he's 3.2K, and there's going to be maybe a few more targets come his way. James O'Shaughnessy is kind of the darling pay down 2.9K tight end, but I won't be playing Foster Moreau. I didn't really want to play him this last time whenever he was chalk. I kept, trying to beat the table essentially for like a Dallas Goedert or people that are going to play. And it was tight end week. All of them went off, it seemed like. So it kind of negated any Foster Moreau love there. But I mean, I don't think that there's anybody you can absolutely pay Travis Kelce. George Kittle George Kittle's a great play, 6.9K. He's in a he takes a little bit of a hit if Debo plays, I think, but I think that George Kittle is a great play. I don't know how much ownership he's going to get. And obviously you want to get a piece of that Tampa Bay Buffalo, that Rob Gronkowski, Dawson Knox. I mean, that could definitely be something that could pay off here. We talked about Dalton Schultz for the Cowboys. Obviously, if you want to put a pass catching option, he's somebody to look at there. But yeah, man, I think you just kind of have to play Hooper that area in cash because you're not really going to want to spend up here at tight end, in my opinion, unless you're playing a Kelce or a Kittle.
Yeah, for cash, for sure. That's what I'm thinking. I'm looking at Austin Hooper. Other guys in that value range, you mentioned them. Jared Cook, 3,200 on DraftKings. Austin Hooper's 34. James Shaughnessy is 29. And then you got, what's his name? Gerald Everett over in Seattle at 35. Looking at that board, who do I trust most? I guess it's Austin Hooper in that situation or probably Jared Cook. But I think my gut is telling me Austin Hooper here just to kind of get by, get the value there, and just move on. That's what I'm going to do. I can die on that sword at 3,400.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. I think your decisions are not going to necessarily be there. Definitely get different in GPP. Absolutely fade Hooper. I am never big on GPP playing a chalk tight end, even if they're 2,500. Like, that's where you differentiate yourself as that tight end, in my opinion, just because all the ownership seems to go on groupthink and everybody jumps on the same guy.
I mean, you mentioned last week was tight end week. Just looking back, I actually had a pretty solid lineup that cashed in a couple of tournaments because I played both, I think, Kittle and Goddard. So, like, you can get crazy that way and play two tight ends. In GPP.
Yeah.
But for cash, just take the safe play, in my opinion. Go with the high percentage play and just move on. Unless it's like a 7,400 value or something, then you can get a little different. But for this side, like I said, the field is on Austin Hooper. Just play Austin Hooper at 3,400 and see what happens.
Yep, I think that's pretty straightforward. And you talked about the two tight end things. One thing I'll say is that I've always been a big running backs at flex for cash is not a absolute law. It's not Bible, but you can absolutely do that. That's probably more popular. Wide receiver is always more GPP, and then tight end. If it's a value play, absolutely do it. I just think that that's a great way to differentiate yourself and probably get the salary savings that you need to go elsewhere because tight end can be super cheap. So,
yeah. All right, and then finally we'll round this out here. Any defenses? I think there's a bunch of good defenses this week. Honestly, we usually don't focus too much on it, but I think there's tons of viable options. Pay up or pay down.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you're paying down, I mean, you can go all the way down to the Giants if you want at 2,300. I mean, the Chargers are without Keenan Allen. There's going to be probably an opportunity for them to at least pay off positive points if you want to pay all the way down. You could say, okay, well, Jacksonville may get really lucky here that maybe they're, in spite of Urban Meyer, they're going to play well. But I think it's probably going to be that Texans are going to look good here. Seattle's look pretty bad. Hopefully Texans can not go negative, but they have some opportunity there. You can look at the Ravens here against, the Browns. I think that they could surprise some people as well. I'm probably going to be a little bit higher in that range. Seahawks against Texans are going to be good, but I honestly think that I've never been an advocate for this, and I might get burned, but this may be a hill that I die on too, is Broncos, 3,800. You have a Detroit Lions team that's depleted. No DeAndre Swift. Their wide receivers are depleted. They're already a bad team. They got their first win. They're on a little bit of a high, but now they're without Jamal Williams, also their backup running back. So they got some scrubs going in, having to travel freaking at these altitudes that are going to gas people out on the road against a good, I say good, but a decent Denver team here. They're only implied for 15 points total. You just got to feel like this is going to be a game where Denver is going to play against a subpar NFL team, maybe college caliber performance. And 3,800, obviously they're not above 4K, so that's good. And I'm not always an advocate for paying up, but I think you're going to have some salary this week. So if you don't see anything you love, maybe the Broncos are going to be a good payoff this week. But, like I said, I don't think that it's necessary all the time, but they've had some good games against some bad teams this year.
Yeah, no, I agree with all those picks. Also, something just to throw out there too, if you're paying down, the Jets, totally viable against Taysom Hill.
Sure.
Taysom Hill could realistically put up 30 points, but also turn the ball over 4 times.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can get some luck there on the Jet side, and coming in at 2,500. Why not? You throw a dart.
That's right. Yeah, man. I think it's more roster construction than anything. And I'm really that's the one thing I always tell myself, like, don't get so fixated on one thing. And, but yeah, it's hard to get off the Broncos here, but I will if I need to. And so, yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up, man, in regards to cash. Like I said, you gotta look. Ownership's a little bit more spread out this week. I think quarterback's going to be a little bit different. People are going to lean towards the value. So if you want to change one or two things, that's kind of the place to go. And I think wide receiver is going to probably make or break it for some people.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Well, thanks, Adam. We'll bring in Miz here to talk about GPP. We'll bring you back in a minute, talk about some Vegas picks, prize picks, that sort of thing. But for now, let's bring in our stacks expert. What's up, Miz? How's it going, man?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. It is the worst weekend in terms of certainty I've seen in quite some time.
The worst year in terms of certainty that I've seen in quite some time.
Yeah, at least on paper, this is probably the worst week for it. But when in doubt, that's why it's a good reason, or it's a good avenue to stack, because the more it takes a lot less to get right. If you just, you focus on one thing, basically, and on one team, one game stack, then it makes it easier to fill out the rest of your roster. So starting with the Chiefs, we've seen the Chiefs start kind of bounce back over the last couple of weeks. Patrick Mahomes is playing a lot better. And we saw what the Chiefs did to the Raiders last time. They absolutely lit them up. So I'm going to go with Tyreek and Kelsey if I can. And just a disclaimer that I am playing Taysom Hill in every lineup. And that's going to be that, just because he's super cheap. Now on DraftKings, that is. He's super cheap, and I think his floor is 12 and his upside is 28. So I'm just going to go with that and let the rest, let the chips fall where they may. So with that, Tyreek going up against Jonathan Abram, Desmond Trufant, Brandon Faxion, whatever. So he's been able to destroy all of those dudes. So I'm going to just go right back to him. And we've seen what Kelsey has done to this team historically just destroyed them. So those two, pairing them with Taysom Hill, And then you can either use, Josh Jacobs is going to be popular, but he's still in a good spot. The floor is kind of low for him, just because he could get just, he could just be run out of the building almost, where they have to just pass the whole time. And he will be in there, but are they going to be checking down at that point? They're going to try to be forcing the ball down the field, I would think. But using Hunter Renfrow, even though he's going to be popular as well. So it's a way to just get a little bit different in a game that we've seen, be fireworks at times.
Yeah, no, there's this funny thing going around with Patrick Mahomes. Like, is he changing his game style and becoming more of like that game manager quarterback? And I don't think so. I think they're not like the Chiefs of old where they're just blowing people out and putting up 50, 60 points a game. However, they're playing, I feel like they're playing playoff styled football here where they're starting to ramp it up as the season gets later. So, I'm putting more and more faith in them as the year goes on. I think they're starting to kind of find their groove a little bit. So happy to throw a few game stacks with them as the core in some of my GPP lineups for sure.
No doubt about it. And then the next one would be Antonio Gibson, Terry McLaurin, and maybe to a little bit lesser extent, RSJ. And then I specifically like Amari Cooper. And you can use somebody else if you want, but it's going to be tough just because of the pricing. But I like Cooper because the price is low and he's claimed to be fully healthy, and is sort of pissed off that he had to kind of sit out for all that shit. So, and not to mention the Cowboys brought their own benches to the Redskins Stadium, which is hysterical.
Did they? What does that even mean? Are they better padding? Oh, it's Jerry Jones, so who knows?
Right? Yeah, it's hilarious. It's absolutely hilarious. So I actually like that game just to stay close throughout. All these games are either predicted to be like a blowout or just not high totals, etc. So I really just like this game because we've seen this before, this game go off before. So I like this a lot. Antonio Gibson basically going to be the 3 down back with McKissick out. There's going to be some Smallwood in there, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. And then we talked about Dak earlier. He's going to be throwing it obviously a lot. And the two defensive ends that we're going to start for the football team,
careful,
they are out sick. So careful. They are very, very thin at the defensive end position. So I expect Dak to have all day to be able to pass to basically whoever he wants, but I'm going to use Cooper.
And, like this Washington secondary, they're ranked 25th in the league. They're just not a good team in terms of secondary. So they are in a little bit of a stride here. Obviously, they're winning some games, but I think it'll be interesting. You talk about Amari Cooper, who I mentioned over in the segment with Adam, who I agree with. I think Amari could have a really nice game. He's also coming in at 5,900 on DraftKings, so that's encouraging when you're going to play him. But also CeeDee Lamb. Adam spoke about in cash, but I think CeeDee Lamb in a stack like this, 7,200 gives you good leverage off of Godwin, who's priced in that similar aspect. That's probably where a lot of stacks are going to go because that game is the highest implied total on the slate. CeeDee Lamb is interesting here because he's been banged up, right? So if you look through his logs, games where he played the entire game and didn't get a concussion or whatever he had and leave the field or whatever, he really hasn't had many bad games where he's played all 4 quarters, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe week 11 against the Chiefs, it was pretty bad. I think he may have had like 5 points or something like that. But other than that, he's been pretty decent. And he actually leads the team with the 32% target share. So like there's the situation there where you can run multiple lineups with different stacks, or you can just even maybe get a little crazy and throw Amari and CeeDee there and just see what happens. Because this game, if it shoots out, they're both going to eat. So,
no doubt about it. It's a great point. And Terry McLaurin on the other side has been a little bit quiet as of late. And then that's exactly the times that he tends to blow up when nobody's really on him. The Dallas defense has been very good. They got Diggs over there, but he does give up actually a lot of yardage and actually touchdowns. He just makes a lot of picks. He's very aggressive and opportunistic.
Yeah, he's not like a shutdown corner. I mean, it explains why he has so many picks, because like he's going for the pick, and if he doesn't get it, then it's a big game. Like it's he's trying to make those big plays, and he does make big plays, but he's not like to go back in time like a Darrelle Revis where he's shutting down that half of the field. Like people
100%.
Yeah.
So I really like this game to just be a little bit, under the radar comparatively to some of the other, popular usage of, Chargers and Bucks and things like that. So the last one, and it's a gross one, especially if you watch the game last week.
We're gonna have to take your temperature. You went to this game 2-3 weeks ago when it was Sunday Night Football, and the nation had to watch that terrible offensive game between these two teams. And now you're coming back 3 weeks later and you're running stacks. So I need to hear some of your mentality here.
So as we know, the Ravens by design are terrible against the tight end, right? Now adding the fact that they've lost literally all of their best defensive backs, Humphrey, Peters, Elliott, and then everybody else is hurt in some regard. Tavion Young's hurt, Anthony Abrett's hurt in some regard. So if they do suit up, it's going to be, a little bit of I hope I make it through the game type status.
What we call a shit show.
Exactly. So this would be one spot where Baker can actually maybe do something and actually throw the ball. That would be nice. Well, it won't be nice, but in terms of this, it will be. So using people like Donovan Peoples-Jones, Austin Hooper, Landry. Landry, your upside's kind of capped. That's the only problem there. I think maybe his ceiling might be 20 points. You're not going to get like a 25 or 28 or 30 out of him, more than likely. But using, cheap guys like Hooper or Peoples-Jones, and then, I'm going to use Taysom Hill, but you could use Lamar too, especially like on FanDuel. Even though Lamar has been so bad as of late, and that's partly on him, but partly on our line. The linemen are hurt. We just lost our backup right tackle last week. So they're going to have to get the ball out quick, or he's going to have to run. So it's going to be Lamar to Hollywood, that's what I would prefer. Or you can use Mark Andrews. Mark Andrews, obviously, he's the safety blanket, but Marquise Brown, you can actually get a really high ceiling out of him because he can beat you on all levels of the field. So, and I believe Ward is out for Cleveland. So that only helps the case for Hollywood Brown. So this game, again, working off history here, has gone, pretty nuts here in the past, with the Ravens coming out on top all this time for the most part. But, if you want to get ugly, you want to get different, real different, this is the way to do it.
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
That's right.
All right. That we covered a lot of game stacks there. Actually, one more than we normally cover. Any one-offs that you're looking at? I got a couple names on my list that may be interesting. Some of them we've talked about already, like a Mike Evans. You mentioned Amari Cooper. I talked about CeeDee Lamb. What about Julio Jones? That's a name.
Yeah, that's number two. My number two play on wide receivers.
Yeah,
5.4 for Julio. I mean, nobody's going to play him. He's always hurt, right? And he probably will get hurt and burn me today, but whatever. Just deal with that later, I guess. But Julio, 5.4 against the Jaguars. I mean,
he's got the upside. The upside's there, and his price tag, like you said, 5.4. That gives you leverage off of a guy like, I don't know who's in that range, like Jarvis Landry. Like you're looking at those two guys. I think Landry's the safer play, but Julio is definitely the guy that could win you a tournament. I don't think Landry's that guy, at least,
Right. Like, are you going to play like Hunter Renfrow or Julio Jones? Like, in a tournament.
Exactly. So, and also, maybe this is the least statistical analysis possible, but maybe he feels like he needs to prove something. Like this guy was a top receiver for years. You don't get that way without having some sort of mental ego about yourself. And he hasn't played basically since like what, week 2, 3, where he was actually healthy. So, maybe he feels like he needs to prove something, and if Tennessee is going to also be a playoff team, like they need a get right game. We saw what the Rams did last week against the Jaguars. That was their get right game. And they're in the same situation. They're coming off a bye week, get it going. Let's, roll into January strong. That's gotta be the mentality that the coaches are promoting here. Like I said, that's more theory than, factual, because I'm not in that locker room, but like it just makes sense. It's logic, so definitely I'll be tossing Julio in a few lineups.
Also like Jerry Jeudy at 5.6. Not really on FanDuel, but he's got CJ Moore going up against this dude, CJ Moore. He's absolute garbage. And it's Detroit, and they're pretty much just laying down. So this could be the date for the Jerry Jeudy breakout game. And then after that, I talked about Amari Cooper. Josh Palmer, I like him the best out of those dudes because he actually can play all positions. He's a thick dude. I mean, he scored a couple of times earlier this year, but this dude's big, dude. I mean, he wears number 5 out there. He looks like a running back. I really like him a lot. And then Ricky Seals-Jones, that's nobody's on him. I mean, we were on him, a few weeks ago, right? And he was chalk. I mean,
he was very solid in the beginning of the year with Logan Thomas out.
So he's back. And then I love the Broncos defense. I mean, that's no duh, but I mean, if you can I would try to get to them if you can.
Also, something to note too, Adam mentioned it in the cash segment, but the Niners and Bengals game could be sneaky high scoring. Niners secondary, it's
banged up.
It's hit or miss. Yeah, like some weeks they show up, other weeks they don't. Like last week, so there is definitely going to be some lineups that I throw in that have like Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, run it back with maybe a Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle, go away from Deebo Samuel a little bit. I think Brandon Ayuk could also just be like a good one-off person to throw in your lineups. Deebo coming back impacts that offense, but Ayuk is starting to come into his own even when Deebo was on the field. So just some ways to look for sure. I'll definitely have like a Niners Bengals game stack somewhere.
I can agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
That's all I got, man.
Yeah, same. Let's bring Adam back. We'll do a quick recap here for everybody in case they missed it. So on the cash side, we spoke about a lot of options. If you're paying down, it looks like it's going to be, Taysom Hill, Cam Newton. If you're paying up, it looks like it's going to be more like the Tom Brady, Josh Allen, even Justin Herbert. You said you weren't in love with Taysom Hill, Adam, but you did mention somebody like a Taylor Heineke could be a totally viable option this week, but you weren't starting at quarterback when you were building your lineups. That was going to be like a second or third option for you. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's just, I don't think that I'm going to lose sleep if I have to play Cam Newton over, Taysom or something like that. Like, I mean, if Taysom beats me with the 40, point, whatever it is, I just think the game script, it limits a little bit of what I think his ceiling is. But like Miz said, he knows what he's going to get him. He's going to get him at least 12. He has 20-point upside, maybe more. So, I mean, no issues there.
Yeah. Yep. And then on the running back front, just got to watch that Melvin Gordon news. If he's out, we love jamming in Javonte, Williams, no matter what. If he plays, we still like Javonte as well, but probably not as much. And then also we were all pretty high on like Alvin Kamara having a good week against the Jets, in spite of Taysom Hill being there to play quarterback and maybe take some of that production out. With Ingram, that's where he really gets his boost. Wide receiver front, we talked about that Chargers offense and all the various options you can go. Mike Williams being activated off the list with Keenan Allen being deactivated. That may give rise to somebody like a Jalen Guyton who could be a saver there. But we overall we were talking about maybe Mike Williams being the guy this week for us to jam in. We also mentioned Amari Cooper, both on the cash and the GPP side, but and some of that Dallas game or that Dallas offense to sprinkle in there. And we went with Amari Cooper just because seems to be the cheaper option at 5.9. Your pay up options here looks like, Steph Diggs, obviously a good option, highest implied total for games with Buffalo and Tampa Bay. Also, Chris Godwin, we said, been really solid over the course of the season. So definitely viable option there as well. Anybody I missed on the wide receiver front that we spoke about that you want to rehash?
No, not really. I just think that, like you mentioned that game, that Cincinnati receivers definitely could. They have a good. I mean, we talked about it. The San Francisco's kind of banged up secondary wise, so I think that's a good game to target too. T. Higgins, if he plays, which he should. So.
Yep. And then on the tight end front, have your pick of the lower price guys. It seems for us we're looking at Austin Hooper, but also Jared Cook's viable. Gerald Everett we mentioned. If you're paying up, it's looking like a Kelsey or a Kittle type of week. But for us, we were landing on Austin Hooper. And then on the defense side, slew of good options. We named everybody from, the Jets and the Giants all the way up to the Broncos and obviously the Chargers. Seahawks are an option against Houston. So that really is just going to be pick your poison, when you're building your lineups there. And then on the GPP side, we talked about three main game stacks that Miz likes. We got the Raiders and the Chiefs, targeting some of those players. We talked about the Dallas and the Washington game, which we think could pop off if those offenses get right. And then also the Browns and the Ravens, which won't be for the weak at heart if you are hoping for a game to explode. But if it does, you should be on the low percentage side as a contrarian play there, stacking that game. Slew of injuries for Baltimore that could really open up that game script for the Browns and actually allow Baker to drop some points. So that's pretty much it on DFS side. Did I miss anything that we should mention specifically before we jump into PrizePicks and then Vegas?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
All right, cool. Well, speaking of PrizePicks, let's move over there and take a look at some of the picks that you guys have looked at. And guys, if you don't know what PrizePicks is, it's a unique website where you can place wagers on player props as well as fantasy props. So maybe you think Tyreek Hill is going to have over 5 or 6 catches, you can bet on that. But also maybe you think he's going to have over 17 fantasy points, you can bet on that too. Just a caveat here, the lines do move very quickly. So whatever Adam and Miz are talking about right now is subject to change by the time we kick off here in 2 hours. So if you like something, get on it. That's pretty much it. Why don't you guys walk us through some of your PrizePicks picks? Your PrizePicks picks. That's weird to say, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure. Miz, I'll go ahead and start it off. I was kind of looking while you were going through, but one of the things that I like to look at is obviously weather in the NFL obviously can dictate a lot, especially when it comes to betting lines and different props or whatnot. But I also love that they offer a first half props a lot of the times. And one of the things I was looking at that kind of struck me was that you have a team like obviously we know Tampa Bay is excellent in all aspects of the game. They're actually one of the highest teams in regards to how many points they've scored. 16.6 average in the first half, obviously through this season. In their last 3 games, they've scored 17 as an average. So obviously Tom Brady, I think he's like 10.5 as an over on fantasy score for the first half. I like first half props because there's a little bit more of a small sample size. You can kind of target, narrow it in, less variance there. But I will mention, because they're in a game together, that San Francisco and Cincinnati, on average, they've been 13.2 for San Francisco, 12.2 for Cincinnati. But over their last 3, 19 points for San Francisco in their first half scoring and 18 points for Cincinnati. They are second and third, right behind Indianapolis, who's not on the slate. So you can just look at the over-under prop props for fantasy score. I think if you're looking at receptions or yards, rushing or passing yards, those are a little bit tougher. Fantasy score, they can kind of come from a little bit different area. You may get bailed out with the touchdown at the end. So you can look at those players from those games and look at the overs in regards to first half scoring. But if we're just looking at it from a total main slate, I think my favorite is targeting a few unders. Looking at those games, I noticed that I think it was like Taysom's at 179.5 passing yards. I actually like the under there. I don't think that that's necessarily picking on Taysom. I just think he's going to be able to do a lot on the ground. There's about a 13, 14 mile per hour wind there. The Jets should not dictate them having to throw a ton. I think Taysom can do a ton of damage with his legs and not really have to worry about airing the ball out there. So I also like looking at it from a the touchdown standpoint prop. If you're looking down there, I think there was that, like we talked about these plays, Antonio Gibson, Josh Jacobs are at 0.5, Leonard Fournette 0.5. I like overs in all those games there. And then I'm looking at also, there was a interceptions prop on there. Taysom, he's on there at 0.5. I think he's going to throw at least one pick, or Dak Prescott 0.5. I think he's going to throw at least one pick today. Just looking at the defensive standpoint, both those games have a little bit of wind in there. You can target those games. And yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. I think PrizePicks, I don't want to go too crazy across the board, where I like overs, unders, because like you said, the lines change a lot. So let's see what Miz has to say about it.
I'm going to give mine real quick just because my son is going nuts. So I'm going to give mine real quick. I like Antonio Gibson over 64.5 rushing yards. We already talked about Gibson today extensively. I like Amari Cooper. The Redskins have been, the football team has been giving up.
Dude, what are you doing over here?
I know. Whatever. Amari Cooper is going to go nuts today. Just he's healthy. He's angry, and the Redskins are terrible on the back end. God, the football team.
Dude, we're gonna get a call from our lawyer.
I know. And then Ricky Seals-Jones for the football team over 26.5
yards. Nice. Okay. Yeah, I like that actually a lot as well. Let's jump. Do you have time for Vegas picks? No? All right. Well, keep your camera on. We'll just look at your nice living room there. Let's jump into some Vegas picks, Adam. But before we do so, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Odds Jam, our sponsor for this segment. Guys, Odds Jam is an innovative solution designed to identify odds that make you the winner every single game. They have the fastest real-time data to spot discrepancies between different sports books and help users place those, risk-free bets. And, we kind of do this in the DFS world, where we'll compare values from FanDuel and DraftKings and kind of try and find the biggest gaps there. That's kind of what they're doing on the sportsbook side. Well, they'll take a slew of data from various books, and they'll see where the biggest discrepancies are, and that's the games you want to target. So, they boast profits average 3% every day, which obviously can add up to big earnings. So this segment sponsored by Odds Jam. Let's take a look at the lines this week. Adam, what do we like here? If you've had a chance to look at some of the numbers.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I know that the composite scores, they're going to change. They're going to move around up and down. But I really do like, and I know that it could be considered a gross game, but I think that the Falcons-Panthers game, I really kind of like that to go over. You're sitting right around 40-ish on the points.
Okay.
I think that that's just a game where Carolina's coming off of a bye. I think that it's a divisional matchup. I think that the Falcons are going to do what they can. Carolina has a decent defense, but I just think that people are looking at the players that are not available, so that's going to kind of push them more towards the unders. But I think it's kind of a low total there. But I'm also looking at just down the board of games where I feel like they're a little bit too high. I'll just be honest. I think that this Jacksonville Tennessee game, it could kind of get kind of gross. I think that the skill players involved in there, Tennessee's applied for 26 points. I get Jacksonville's bad, but I could see Jacksonville covering here. I understand
Division
it is
game.
what it is, but yeah, division game, the team is in flux in regards to, these guys in the locker room are probably going to band together regardless of who their coach is. And so I think that that's something to kind of look at here. So I think that Jacksonville could definitely cover. I'm not saying they're going to win the game, but absolutely think that's in play. And then I know we talked about San Francisco and then the Cincinnati game. I mean, look at their trends. I mean, you're talking about the last 3 weeks, first half scoring. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but 19 points and 18 points. If we're sitting there, we're already at 40 points at the halftime. I'm not saying it's going to get there, but I think it's very doable. So I think I'd like it to go over. It's at 48 and a half, I think, ish right now. And it's definitely looking to me to be over 50 points there. I think that it's a little soft. So yeah, that's where I'm at. What about you?
Yeah, I like a lot of those over-unders. When I'm looking at this slate, I'm looking more at just the spreads on the teams. So for me, I think I like Washington at +6. Right now on the FanDuel sportsbook, I'm looking at live. It's +6.5, which is even better for me if I like Washington. I think that game will end up being pretty close. I think Dallas ultimately wins that game. But I like the football team at +6.5. I also like the Saints at -5 against the Jets. I just don't think the Jets are good. I just, it's the end of the year. I think they'll do some things on their end to kind of get themselves, I guess, right in terms of like hope and looking forward. But like you mentioned, the Saints are playing for a playoff berth. I don't think they're going to let this game, or they're going to try to not let this game be too close. I could see them winning by more than a touchdown for sure. And then finally, there's a couple of other games that I do like, but the line in Detroit and Denver is up to 11.5. And I'm wondering if that's too high for that Denver Broncos offense. Like, I think the Broncos are going to win for sure.
Right.
I just 11.5 seems high for me. So you know what? I'm going to go with the hot hand. I'm going to go with Detroit Lions plus 11.5 against the Broncos. The Lions play teams tough. They're not good, but they do play teams tough. So I think, if that line was at 9.5, maybe I'd like Denver. Right. But 11.5, I think they can cover that. So I'm gonna go with the Lions.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, that's definitely fair. I like all those. I think that you're right about Denver. I mean, sometimes you're looking at it like what's really going to happen in there. And we could get a lot of back and forth, a lot of in between the 20s and not a lot of points punched in, maybe a field goal type of game. But yeah, man, I enjoyed it. I think that it's going to be a fun slate. We got a couple hours ready to make your lineup. So obviously, if you're in our Discord, I want to plug that. Make sure you get in. If you're in premium, make sure you jump in that chat. And then, let us know if you have any questions about your lineups.
Yeah, for sure. And head over to yourfielderschoice.com. We got tons of data there, articles on GPP stuff, articles on cash builds. We got our infamous cheat sheet that has percentages, ownership, all stats that help you make smart decisions when you're building your lineups. And then if football's not your forte, like we got plenty of other options as well too. We got soccer, we got baseball, we got football. I mean, college football, college basketball, NBA, you name it, we got it. So head over to yourfielderschoice.com and check it out. That pretty much wraps us up here. Like you said, we got 2 hours before kickoff, just under 2 hours. So everybody have fun. Good luck out there. And we will talk to you next week.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Be good. Bye.